Hello, and thank you for joining me today on Krista So Crafty. Today we're going to be making a makeup bag. My granddaughter loves pink flamingos, so I found this material and I knew I had to make her something from it. So for this project, all you're going to need is some interfacing. I have some iron-on interfacing, 2 pieces of light material to be used for the lining, and of course your 2 outer pieces with some batting. For the quilting, all I did is I took my ruler and I ran my presser foot down the edge of one of it both ways, and that's how I got the straight line quilting for it, but you can quilt it any way you like. So now I'm just going to take a ruler and I'm going to mark out 2.75 inch squares in the corners. If you're using directional material, please make sure that you have the squares on the bottom so that your items are facing up. You also need to make a mark 2.75 inches across the bottom of the material and draw a line, and then we're going to cut those out, those diagonals out, and you're also going to cut out the squares where we drew before. Now I've also gone ahead and I've pressed my interfacing onto the back of the printed outside piece. So now we're going to start installing the zipper. So you're going to have your quilted material face up, you're going to take your zipper and you're going to place it face down, and you're going to take your lining and you're going to place it on there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to line everything up. You want to make sure that the edges of the lining and the edges of the quilted piece line up on each edge, and then we're going to pin it. I like to use pins for this, but you can also use clips, but you want to make sure that everything is lined up, and the pins or the clips are going to help to hold everything in place. And as you can see, I use quite a few just to hold it in place. I've also installed the zipper foot onto my sewing machine, and that's what I'm going to use to sew the zipper on. It just makes it a little bit easier. So just line everything up on with your presser foot, and what I do is I run the edge of the presser foot against the edge of the zipper, and I just run it all the way down, removing my pins as I go. So now that the zipper is sewn into place on the one side, what I like to do is open up the lining and fold it back on itself so that the zipper is laying out nice and flat. And I use my fingers to kind of finger press it down, pulling it away from the zipper, and we're going to do a stitch actually across there, and this will help to hold the lining back away from the zipper so it doesn't get caught later on when you're using it. So when you're doing that top stitch, you want to go as close to the edge as possible of that where the folded over seam is. I go about 1/8 of an inch about there and sew all the way down. And what I like to do as I'm going along is I like to trim my threads, get them all trimmed up, and then we can proceed. So now it's time to put the zipper, the material and whatnot onto the other side. So take your fabric and put it face up. And we're going to take our zipper, which is attached to our other front and our lining, and we're going to put it so that the zipper is face down. And we're going to line up our edges. We want to make sure that these edges line up. These edges, and then we're going to put our lining piece on, and we're going to do the same thing that we did on the other side. Is we're going to line them all up, get them all pinned together, and we're going to sew it. So now that we have everything sewn together, we can now start putting the lining and the bag together. So what we need to do is match up the outside pieces and the lining pieces, and we're going to sew all the way around. We're going to leave an opening in the lining so that we can flip it in right sides out, and then pretty much our bag will be done. Another very important tip, make sure that you open your zipper about halfway. Otherwise, after you sew it together, you're not going to be able to get into your bag, and that would not be good. So again, we're going to match up our outside pieces and our inside pieces, and we're just going to sew them together. Now, I'm going to start on the outside pieces first. So I'm, again, just making sure that everything is all lined up like that. Now, when we go to sew this, the only places we're going to sew right now are down both the sides and across the bottom. Don't sew these. We'll sew those later. Okay, so I'm just going to get some pins in here, but we want to make sure that everything is all matched up nicely. Don't be scared to use a lot of pins. Sometimes this material, depending on the type of material you're using, can be slippery. So don't be scared to use a lot of pins. Make sure that everything is together properly. Just like so. Now, the other thing we want to do is to make sure that our zipper, our teeth on our zipper are facing to the outside of the bag. So I just like to take my finger and kind of push it and fold it so that it's kind of on its side. Now, the zipper I'm using is a plastic zipper, so I can sew over this with my sewing machine. Do not try that if you have a metal zipper. You will not be happy at all. Your machine, your needle will break. So make sure you're using a plastic zipper. We're going to do the same thing on this side. Now this side, because we have the zipper open, we just want to make sure that those teeth are lined up. And I'll put a pin in there. Now my zipper is too long, and that's okay. So once I sew this, okay, so I'm going to sew these sides and the bottom, and from here to here and here to here. And when I go to sew over this, I'm going to do a double stitch, and then once it's sewn, I'm going to cut this excess off. And there's no rhyme or reason to how to sew this. You just sew it however you want. I am going to change my foot back to my walking foot just because I like using that. So I'm just going to undo the little screw over here and take this out because we don't need the zipper foot anymore. And I'm just going to add my walking foot. I enjoy using this because what it does is it holds the front and the back pieces together, and it pulls them through at the same time. So I find it gets a better feed through. There we go. So now I'm going to start down on the lining right here, and I'm going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam, like so. And I'm also going to back stitch at the beginning and the end. We don't want the stitches to come undone. So as I'm coming up to my pin, I'm going to take my pin out before I get there and sew up to where my pin was. And again, I'm going to back stitch, cut my thread, and I'm going to move to the next pin. I'm going to get my foot in position, take out the pin, and I'm going to go ahead and back stitch just so that everything is together nice and that's not going to come apart. Now I'm just going to turn. I'm going to go down the side. All right, so you'll need to be careful going up and over because there is it is quite thick where that zipper is. So I'm just going to hold it. I took the pin out, and I'm just going to stitch over that and take this pin out because it's in the way and I don't want to hit it. I'm going to back stitch over that, and I'm going to go forwards, and I'm going to line up, and I'm going to sew down here. Now I'm just going to continue on, and I'll do the bottom and the other side. All right, we have it all sewn together, so let's trim some stuff. Now that we have it all sewn together, I'm just going to trim up some of these threads like so, and I'm going to trim these pieces of the zipper off like so. that. And now we are ready to make some corners. So what we need to do is each one of these corners, we're going to go to the opening and we're going to match up our seams like so. Like line everything up. You're going to need some pins. I'm going to pin the center together. And then I'm going to line up the edge here. And I'm going to put a pin in here, if I can get a hold of a pin. And I'm going to pin on the other side. I'm going to do this to all 4 corners, like so. And then we can go to the sewing machine and sew them. And now I always like to try to make sure that the seam is going the same way. So this side that we just pinned is going that way on the top. So I'm going to make sure that that one is going to the right as well. It just helps the bag lay nicer in the end. So I'm going to put a pin in here. And make sure you get it nice and straight. You want your bottom. This is what's going to give you a boxy bottom, so it will have a bigger area, surface area on the bottom, and it will stand up nicely. So let's get this pinned. And I'm just going to continue on and do the other side. Now that everything is all pinned, we can take this to our sewing machine and we're going to sew across here on each of the corners. So I'm just going to lay this down here and I'm going to sew it. Again, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam. Ooh, just about didn't get that pin out of there in time. You don't want to run over your pins. We have everything sewn. It's now time to turn everything around. So let's go down to the lining and find the hole that we left. We're going to reach in there and go to the very bottom down here and start pulling out our bag. Now, if we've done it right, we can get this pulled out. We will be able to sew up our opening in the lining, and then we'll be all done. All right, so let me go like this. So all I do is I just put my fingers inside that hole where in the lining and fold it in, and the edges fold in nice and neat. I'm just going to tuck those little strings in. It lines up nicely, and I'm just going to put a couple pins in here just to keep it nice, and then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to use the machine to close that. Now, if you wanted, you can hand stitch this closed by all means, but really it's inside the bag and I don't think anybody wouldn't even notice it. So I am just going to use my sewing machine and stitch across there. All right, so I didn't take you long with that, but I did stitch that using my sewing machine. I'm just trimming off these little threads, and now we can put this inside and push out our bag. You can open the zipper up all the way now and push out those corners. Get your fingers in there and just get those corners all pushed out. This is so cute. Just like so. Okay. That's very cute. I love it. I think it's so cute. So now I'm just going to poke these zipper pieces up a bit like that. And look there it is. There is our bag. So cute. So cute. And as you can see, it's got that nice boxy bottom so it can stand up on its own. You can open up the zipper, and inside you have a nice finished bag that will hold a lot of stuff. This is very cute. Very cute. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial today, making the zippered pouch. You can make these any size. This is just the size I chose to make. And yeah, it's just so cute. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial, and thank you again for joining me. Happy crafting.